Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. So this evening was billed as the debate of all debates for our next mayor. And as you've probably heard, hopefully you're following the news. We've had a couple of the candidates drop out of the race. We had Rick Caruso was originally said he would make the debate, and then he had a prior commitment, so he couldn't make the debate. He let us know that early on. So we actually, when we only have one candidate that actually is here tonight. So there's no more. It's not a debate. Karen Bass is going to be joining us in a little while, and we're going to have a nice intimate one-on-one with Congress member Karen Bass. And she was here back in January, but there's a lot has happened since then. So hopefully you guys will stay tuned, and you'll stay, we've got a lot of good information to tell you about as far as some community stuff, our normal community updates. And then we'll get into it with Karen as well. And it looks like it's going to be, at this point, a two-legged race between Karen and Rick Caruso. And so it'll be very, very interesting. We will go back to them once the primary, in between the primary and the general, and see if we can get them back for a debate. But we'll see what's happening with that. So anyway, and we were going to have Phil Sherman. He was our moderator, but again, since it's just a one-on-one, we decided to give him the option of opting out, and so he's on the news tonight doing his regular things instead of taking the time off and hosting our debate. We will have other debates scheduled. We're planning on having a supervisor debate. We're planning on having a couple other debates between the primary and the general. So let's get on to the meeting itself. Let's have our board of directors introduce themselves. If you guys can unmute yourselves in advance right now so that we can introduce yourself. Jules, Tom, John Eisen, Maria, Nancy, and then Jay. Go ahead and in that order. Jules.
Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Jules Spear, and I'm community outreach.
Thank you. Tom.
Hello, everybody. Tom Glick. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am co-chair of the Land Use and Planning and Land Use Committee.
Okay.
Hi, I'm John Eisen, treasurer of the association.
I'm Maria Pavlou-Calvin, and I chair the legislative committee.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Nancy Segoyan. I'm the membership chair. Quick plug for membership. We're nonprofit, and we could use your support. If you're not a member, please join. We do a lot of good advocacy on behalf of Sherman Oaks and vicinity. So go to Join SOHA at soha914.com and join us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Weitzler. I am secretary of SOHA, and also I have a relationship along with Jules with the Buckley School. And Buckley, I just wanted to let you know, Buckley would like to alert you that they're going to do a little bit of construction on their old 60-year-old buildings on campus. It'll be internal construction, so hopefully that construction won't disturb anybody. But obviously there'll be trucks coming and going at various times. They want me to let you know that they'll attempt to minimize that discomfort on any neighbors. But if you have an issue, contact me or contact Lisa Turchin or Sally Sakon up at the Buckley School and send them any questions or comments if you are being disturbed.
Okay. Bob, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bob Anderson. I'm the vice president of SOHA, and I get the pleasure of running the Zoom part of these meetings.
Okay, great. And I'm Matt Epstein, and I'm president of SOHA. Also, on our newsletter, whether you get it mail or whether you get it online, I've been writing the last couple of articles as far as comings and goings, new things that are going out of Sherman Oaks or businesses that are coming into Sherman Oaks and businesses that are closing. So if you do have any scoops on stuff that's that you know is happening, just send me an email. I'm happy to go ahead and put it in that. Getting good response. People are enjoying that part of the newsletter. Also, just to cover Bob, if your question does not get asked, we have a lot of questions that have been sent to us for the candidates. It's not because it's the absolute best question that we've ever seen. It might be because it's directed to the wrong person. It might be about fixing a pothole on your street, and we will make sure it gets to the right person. Or it might be that I'm giving Bob the hook that we've run out of time and we just didn't get to your question. So don't blame or send any hate mail to Bob. He does an amazing job.
Thanks, Matt.
Also, starting next month at our next month's meeting, we've got a great speaker. I think you guys are going to be really, really excited to hear this gentleman. I'm not going to tell you who he is. You'll read about it in the newsletter, but it's he's going to give a different point of view of what's going on in Sacramento. And it'll be, I'm really looking forward to it. We will also have, starting next month, a committee report by a member of ours who's been a member for a long time, but he's now chairing our unhoused committee or a homeless committee. The unhoused is the new word that you're supposed to use instead of homeless. So he is the chair of our Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association unhoused committee. His name is Larry Slade. He's an attorney in the area and a very passionate man. And he is going to be working with the council office as well as the SLOs. We're looking forward to his report next month. So speaking of SLOs, you guys want to take the lead on that? Jose, you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Matt Epstein. Good evening, everybody. I'm Officer Saldana from, I'm the senior lead officer for the southern portion of Sherman Oaks. I cover everything south of Ventura towards Mulholland, between Coldwater Canyon and Sepulveda. For the southern portion of Sherman Oaks, we're down at our crime from last year. Our property crimes is slightly up on just basically on burglary from motor vehicles. Do not leave anything valuable in your vehicle. Another just a pointer on your burglary alarms. Even if you have an alarm, it's an audible alarm. Please set your alarm. Even if you're going out for dinner for about an hour, set the alarm. We had a few houses that their alarms were not set and they were just out for a couple of hours and they broke into the house. So please set your alarms. And I have one more thing. If for business owners, and I know CD4 could probably talk a little bit about this. The CD4 has launched a Ventura team for homeless committee. So there is a number. If you have a homeless issue in the area on Ventura Boulevard and the surrounding area, you could contact 818-394-0370, 818-394-0370.
And what does that number get you?
It's the CD4 has launched a social workers that could go out and attempt to house these individuals.
So that's a number to the CD4 rep. So I just assume that they're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So if something's happening in the weekends or nighttime, it's just going to go to voicemail.
So Matt, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, it goes directly to our homelessness team, and they respond to non-urgent homelessness related cases at businesses along Ventura in CD4.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you, Ron.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Senior Lead Officer Romo. I am one of the newest senior lead officers for the Van Nuys area. I cover the northern part of Sherman Oaks. So from the 405 to some parts of Magnolia and Chandler to parts of Coldwater and basically north of the 101 freeway or Van Nuys Boulevard. For my Grand Theft Autos, I'm proud to say that as of year today, I'm down 35.59%. And burglary from motor vehicles and TFMBs, they're also down 9.45%. And this is because community members are being reminded to lock it high to keep it. I know it sounds like a broken record, but you guys are doing it. My numbers are down, so please keep it up. Remember to make sure your doors are locked. Do not leave anything in plain sight. Try to park under a lighted area. And let's make it harder for the suspects to break into your vehicles, and let's not become the next victim in the Sherman Oaks area. I also wanted to advise, as of May 15, this last Sunday, the city of LA resumed the enforcement for vehicle use as dwellings. These are RVs that people are living in. I wanted to inform the community that LADOT, our Department of Transportation, is taking lead. What they're going to be doing is speaking to the RV owners, and they're gonna try to give them homeless resources or any type of other resources that they would like. And then from there, they will continue their investigation. But even though LADOT is taking primary with these RVs, please continue to let me know of the RVs in my area, and I will contact DOT and work hand in hand with them. Thank you very much, everyone. Please continue to contact me. And if you would like to have a neighborhood watch meeting, let's continue to build that strong relationship with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Erin, you want to give a quick report from the mayor's office?
Sure thing. Good evening, everyone. I want to touch on something that really impacts all of us. Sorry, my dog just went crazy and my husband's going to help. So last week, Mayor Garcetti announced that LADWP will move to phase 3 of its emergency water conservation plan. And this requires all LADWP customers to cut the number of outdoor watering days from 3 to 2. So the transition, which requires city council approval, would go into effect on June 1st. And that's for all LADWP customers with street addresses ending in odd numbers. Watering will be limited to Mondays and Fridays. And for even numbers, watering will be limited to Thursdays and Sundays. And that's for not just residents, but businesses as well. And so if you want some information on that, I would go to the LADWP website. There's also some amazing rebates, and that is at ladwp.com/save. There's some great volunteer opportunities coming up and good opportunities for youth. So if you're interested, please reach out. And then just a brief announcement that I'll be leaving on maternity leave on June 17th. And while before the meeting, I thought I would be able to attend the next meeting, the next SOHA meeting is actually our Mayor's Youth Council graduation. So this will be my last meeting with you before child. But I look forward to seeing you guys when I come back in the fall.
Thank you, Erin. And I see the Congresswoman has joined our call, so we'll be getting into the thick of things in a minute. So Ryan, do you want to give a quick CD4 update? And then after that, Lily from Assembly Member Nazarian's office.
Yep, ready to go. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. This is Ryan Ahari, Sherman Oaks Field Deputy for Council Member Nithya Raman in the 4th Council District. I wanted to give an update on behalf of our office. I'm working with the Neighborhood Council and different Sherman Oaks residents on projects such as Ernie's Walk and also a Welcome to Sherman Oaks sign to be displayed at Beverly Glen and Mulholland. I've also been touring different sites in our district. So Emma Taylor, our district director, and myself toured our local temple, Temple of Nine Hayam, as well as Emek Hebrew Academy off of Sepulveda and Magnolia. Today, we hosted a Caltrans cleanup, 101 in Sepulveda, southbound on-ramp. So if you specifically use that, and the next time you wonder why it looks so beautiful, it's because our office partnered with Caltrans, and we did about 3 to 4 hours worth of cleaning up today. I also wanted to let you all know our office is hosting a composting demonstration at the Sherman Oaks Farmers Market on May 24th from 2 to 5 p.m. This is really important because we're all going to have to start composting very, very soon, and it's important to know how we do that. It's currently budget season. The council member has introduced or is advocating for a number of budget priorities, and specifically for Sherman Oaks, I wanted to highlight funds for the Van Nuys Sherman Oaks tennis courts, the Benedict Canyon Improvement Project, as well as a Kester Elementary Crossing Guard. I did want to mention 2 more things. We worked with Officer Romo. Thank you, Officer Romo, for getting rid of the graffiti next to Sugar Taco and Fit House. I want to, in that vein, give a huge shout out to Jules and Maria Calvin for flagging so many locations in our district that need our attention. And I've been religiously filing 311 reports. This is a call to everyone in our community. Please let me know where there is graffiti, trash, or abandoned buildings. Those can, at least the first two, trash and graffiti, can be resolved fairly quickly. Please give me a call, 213-424-2412, or email me, ryan.ahari@lacity.org. That's my report. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. Lily, do you have anything that's super important, or can we get on to?
No, just to say hi, I'm Lily. I'm the new field representative in State Assembly Members Adrena Zarian's office. Just to cut it short, I'm going to leave my contact information along with my district director's contact information in the chat. If you guys have any questions about legislation or anything the state can help you with, you can reference that in the future and reach out to us. I know we have Congresswoman to get to, so I'm just going to keep it short.
Awesome. Thank you, Lily. Appreciate it. Okay, Congresswoman, are you there?
I am here.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How's everyone?
Everyone's great. Well, they are dropping like flies, Karen. You're doing right. And this evening, for those of you who've just logged on, we've got a couple hundred people on the Zoom call tonight. Our debate was billed as the mayoral debate, hosted by Phil Sherman, Fox 11 News anchor extraordinaire, down to just one person on the phone on the call with us, Congresswoman Karen Bass. So we all know that Mike Fear dropped out of the race. He gave his support to you. A couple other folks have dropped out, and I guess tonight Rick Caruso dropped out just so that you're right. No, I'm just kidding about that. But anyway, if you want to let the audience know, talk for a couple minutes about why you are the greatest thing in the world and why you should be our next mayor. And we've got some great questions that have been sent beforehand. And then we've got some folks that are chiming in right now on some Q&As. So we appreciate your time. And we also appreciate you've got a limited amount of time. So we'll get right to it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me back. And I did see that everybody dropped, but it was important enough to me. I was not going to just cancel just because they weren't there. I look forward to our conversation tonight, just like I did the last time. I will say that the last time I was with you, it seems like it was ages ago, but Richard was here. And I was just so shocked when he suddenly passed away. And if I'm not mistaken, it was pretty much right after that. And if you recall, I mentioned to the association then that I first met Richard 30 years ago. And when I was in South LA, I had started an organization called Community Coalition to address the problems that we were having there with crime, gang violence, and all of that, wanting to figure out how to address crime. And I would go with lots of residents to City Hall, and you guys would be there, the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. I don't recall what the issue was, but I learned from the way you guys handled City Hall and also the folks in West LA who were fighting the expansion of the Fox studios, that there's areas of our city where people feel marginalized. And so what I felt in common with the Valley was the marginalization that people in South LA feel as well. Even though I have lived in the Valley, we had a similar experience in terms of wanting City Hall to be responsive. So I made a big decision to not run for Congress again. If I was just thinking about my political career, the decision would have been to stay in Congress and run for a leadership position. But I've never been motivated that way in my life. I've made life decisions based on issues that were very, very important. And I do believe our city is in a profound crisis. And I think there's a couple of directions we could go in, and one that I believe will solve the problems, and the other that I believe will not solve the problems, but will actually create a lot of division and tension in our city. And I think that's the last thing that we need. So that's why I decided to run. I know we'll get into the conversation and talk about the problems of public safety and homelessness and development and all of that. And so I could go on and on forever, but I would much prefer to engage in a dialogue with everyone.
Okay, great. Well, Bob will get straight on that. Bob, you want to go ahead and take the mic?
That's great. Hi, Karen. This is Bob Anderson. I'll be asking the questions. We got quite a few, and I know you have limited time. So if I could ask you to keep your answers complete, but as brief as possible, then we'll get as many questions as we can.
Sure.
If that's okay. The first one's sort of a general one. And it says, you have been a remarkable person in government in the legislative branch, but you have never operated a business. With all the issues LA faces, what makes you think you can be an effective mayor?
Well, first of all, that's actually not true. I have started and run and built.
And I didn't write that question.
No,
Okay.
that's no problem. I know I've heard it that I've only signed the back of a paycheck, not the front of a paycheck. Actually, anybody that pays bills with checks signs the front of a paycheck. But no, I have successfully started several nonprofit corporations that have done well. One is 32 years old now. Another one is 10 years old. A nonprofit corporation, as you know, the difference is the outcome, the bottom line is different. So I had investors who were foundations, private individuals who followed an idea that I proposed, a business plan. I was funded to do that. And the product that I had to produce was policy change. So when I started Community Coalition 32 years ago, it was a project that was housed at USC until we broke off and became our own independent nonprofit corporation. So I have started and successfully run nonprofit organizations. And the 2 years that I served as Speaker of the House, I had to manage the world's 5th largest economy, which is the state of California, when we were in the throes of the greatest recession since the Depression. We had a $40 billion deficit, and managing that and making surgical cuts, very painful cuts, getting everybody upset with the decisions that were made. I managed that to the point where I was awarded, along with the other 3 legislative leaders, a John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award, which is one of the really big honors in our country. I have managed in a crisis. When I went to Congress, I was in charge of the Congressional Black Caucus when COVID hit. And I pulled together the Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American caucuses. We pushed back against the Trump administration, and we were able to win billions of dollars to fund COVID relief economically as well as health in communities that we knew were going to be disproportionately affected. So I'm not talking about the big American Rescue Package that was trillions of dollars. I'm talking about my contribution to that and my leadership through that crisis.
That's terrific. Thank you for that. Then you can imagine we got a lot of questions on the unhoused. And I'm going to lump a few of them together here and give them to you. One we got was anonymous, but it basically said, how are you going to get the homeless or the unhoused off our streets? And what's your timeline? But an adjunct to that, Walt Gorsey submitted a question saying, in order to obtain approval to provide housing for the homeless, an organization must obtain approval from 5 to 7 county and city departments. This must be done sequentially, not simultaneously. So specifically describe how you were going to eliminate this bureaucratic quagmire. And then, of course, the question from Charles Baker about the $800,000 per homeless person unit to provide shelter. So you get the gist of what the question is.
Yeah, I do. And one of the reasons for that $800,000 per unit is the 5 to 7 city and county departments, the bureaucracy, all of the red tape, the delays that drives up the costs. You know, the way I view it is that from my point of view, the city and the county, their goal was to reduce homelessness. They have not had the perspective of ending homelessness. I think it's just incredible that we have allowed people to live on the streets. When you drive through town, and I was in the Valley the other day, And, you know, I drove through an area where it was a lot of trees and all, and you just saw just an entire block of people living in tents and also RVs. I feel like the city and the county have to have an orientation that homelessness has to end, that there's just some things you don't do on the street, and sleeping is one of them. It is completely unacceptable for the city and the county not to work together hand in glove. So, you know, all of us say we're going to declare an emergency on day one, right? And I would do the same, but a city emergency is not enough. You all know, you've read the charter, you know, there's about 4 lines in the charter that describe the mayor's power with a state of emergency. I believe the state of emergency has to be declared on a federal level so that we could bring in FEMA. So you asked about the timeline. My timeline is right now. I don't want to sit here and say, this is what I would do if you elected me mayor. I'm a member of Congress right now. I'm in DC. I have strong ties with the Biden administration. Very different than the Trump administration, where they were not allowed to really talk to Democrats. The Biden administration, I can pick up the phone and call a cabinet secretary. As a matter of fact, I put in a request for Marcia Fudge, who's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, to come here and to come here right away. She'll be here in the next couple of weeks because there's a lot of regulations within HUD that need to be waived. There's regulations in the bureaucracy here that is unacceptable. We need to also have a private, we need to bring together and have a private fund so that there can be a developer that wants to build, does not have to wait for all of the financing. But things like, why is it that tax credits that are only issued a couple of times a year? All of that is about an orientation that was not trying to end the problem. And I think that we have to change our orientation. I know I'll stop here. I could say much, much, much more, but I think we'll probably get into it in the conversation.
And as we go on, I'm going to flip topics a bit, but we can come back with some additional questions I have if you have time. Two that could kind of work together. Let's talk about attack ads.
Attack ads?
Attack ads.
Oh.
Yeah, you know, there's some that have been put out against you, and kind of like your comment on there, and maybe you're planning some, you know, just your comment on that whole thing. And another person in the audience, Lorna Boyd, said there has been negative news regarding you and free tuition from USC, and Lorna would like to hear your side of the story.
Absolutely. You know what? I appreciate you asking. I mean, I think the origin of the attack ads are, you know, Rick has spent, I think, $30 million now. And he raised his poll numbers from 8 until now he's caught up to me. But the point of the attack ads is to lower my poll numbers, which $30 million has not been able to lower my poll numbers. Lower my poll numbers and raise my negatives. That's the point of attack ads. So thank you for asking about the USC situation. I was really kind of blindsided about that. You should know that I have a very long history with USC. I went to USC as a member of the physician assistant program, which is a part of the medical school. I was on USC's faculty for 15 years, and we had a benefit at USC at the time, which is that if you worked on the faculty, you could go to school tuition free. And if you worked 15 years, you could go to school tuition free. And so I originally enrolled thinking that I still had that benefit. They changed the benefits after I left. So I got a phone call from the dean, who years later winds up being indicted. I, of course, didn't know that. And she offered me an opportunity to go to school and study social work. Now, let me back up and tell you why I wanted to go to school to study social work. One of the issues that I have worked on for many years is transforming the nation's child welfare system. If we can transform the nation's child welfare system, we can deal with an entire category of people who are unhoused, okay? So I felt very confident that I understood the system in the county and in the state, but knew nothing of the nation. And so I didn't want to just rely on lobbyists and staff. I wanted to have my own depth of knowledge. So I went to school. It was a virtual program. This was in 2011, years before people were that familiar with virtual programs. But before I went to school, when the dean called me up and offered me an opportunity to go to enter that program, I contacted the House Ethics Department. I wrote a letter and I said, is it okay for me to receive this scholarship? And they said, and they wrote me an 8-page letter back and approved me attending the program. Now, part of the ad says that I voted to send money to USC, which that's a kind of a play on the process. The bills that are listed on that ad are like 2,000-page bills. They're massive appropriation bills. There's a defense bill that funds the government. There is nothing, and we went and we looked because we were like, was there something in those bills? There's nothing in those bills that specifically funds USC, but it might fund the Department of Education that then might give a grant to USC. So what I do, and all of us do in Congress, all of the local schools, the local colleges come and visit us and lobby us to support education funding. USC does it, Northridge, you name all of the schools in the region have visits, and so they do that. So that was a connection that was made. So I was actually surprised when that became a campaign issue, that it's controversial to go to school so that you can be a better legislator.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of quickie questions, I hope anyhow, and then we can go back to some other things. But Charles Baker asks, do you support the recall of George Gascon? If not, why not?
You know what? I do not support the recall, and I'll explain that. But let me tell you something, because when I spoke to you guys the last time, you guys pointed out to me that my name was on a website, and I was stunned. I had no idea about that. As a matter of fact, I got off the call and looked up the website. So my name was put on a website without my authorization. When I found out about it, because you guys pointed it out to me.
Good.
Took my name down. But I don't support the recall because I don't think that's the best strategy. I am concerned about the recall process period. I feel like it's run amok. We have 60 recalls going on in the state right now. And I believe that the best way to deal with somebody, if you disagree where they're coming from, is to pressure them. Now, I don't support some of his decisions that I do, some of his policies. But what I have found, and I think you guys have seen it, because there has been a tremendous amount of pressure on him, he has backed away from some of his policies. So I think you recall somebody if they violated the law, if they've done something completely egregious. But like the recall of the governor, for example, you know, we spent as taxpayers probably $250 million for that recall. And it's like, if we keep recalling people, we pay for it every single time that we do that. So I just don't think that that's the best strategy. It's not specific to George Gascon. The recalls of the city council members, I don't support either, even though I might disagree with their policies.
Okay, and that's good. Jules Fear asked the questions. Do you agree or disagree on the, let's call it, potential Supreme Court decision on Roe versus Wade?
Passionately disagree. Passionately.
Okay. A quick answer. We're going to switch over to something very interesting. We got one kind of anonymous question. It says the Department of Building and Safety is continually plagued by corruption. Mm-hmm. How do you intend to deal with the issues there?
Thank you.
We got one other from Lisa Seidman. I live in a neighborhood greatly desired by developers. The Department of Building and Safety has ignored violations of the baseline mansionization ordinance. LADBS also makes up their own permit definitions. As mayor, what kind of oversight you will enforce over them so that they'll stop ignoring business codes and ordinances?
Well, let me just tell you that when I used to see you guys in City Hall, that was the main reason why, was because Building and Safety would ignore code enforcement. And they allowed things to happen in South LA that you really don't see in other parts of town. And so I believe that the city officials, especially department heads, absolutely have to be accountable. So in terms of the issue of corruption, though, I want to do a top to bottom review of city departments, city procedures. And Norm Eisen, who he was President Obama's ethics czar, and the Obama administration was the most scandal-free administration we've had pretty much in our lifetime. And I got to know him in a couple of ways. And when I threw my hat in the ring to run, he called me right away. He's an Angelino, by the way, even though he lives in DC now, but he follows what's happening here, and he knew about the corruption that was going on. He called me right away and volunteered that if I won, that he would come here and help me do that top to bottom review. So I think we need to look at a number of things. A lot of the corruption in our city has centered around developers and developments. And so building and safety is a part of that, where if they're going to fast track an approval. And I do, but by the way, believe, going back to the homeless issue, that if you are a developer and you are going to build housing to deal with our crisis, you don't need to go to the front of the line. I want you to have your own separate line. And I think we need to look at every single roadblock, every single piece of bureaucracy, and we need to treat it like we did in this city in 1994 when the earthquake happened. Because we rebuilt this city in record time. Why? Because we treated it like it was an emergency.
That's great. And there's a lot of things that can be done with streamlining to get these processes to move better. Different subject altogether, the water shortage. Last week, the city restricted watering, as Aaron mentioned. And Pat Ballou asks the question, I hope I pronounced that right. We are getting a drought, not the first as I remember. Time and again, the city promises to collect water flowing into LA River and Ocean. Right. Now we may be too late to do even that. What do you see as plausible actions and projects to reclaim water from whatever source to help mitigate the current and future droughts?
Well, you know, I am hoping that the federal legislation that was passed as part of the infrastructure sent millions of dollars to LA for recycling. And we need to definitely do that. We need to increase that. We need to expand that. We need to deal with rainwater capture. And then unfortunately, I think for the next few months, we're going to have draconian conservation. I mean, you know, we're going to 2 days a week, as I was listening to earlier, but in a minute, it's probably going to be 1 day a week. So conservation. The other thing that I would really promote would be drought resistant landscaping, but we need to do it better than we did it the last time, because the last time we had, well, I call them predators, who preyed on people with really terrible landscaping that all fell apart. People got rid of their lawns and then they were left with all these rocks. You know, so I would really vet the vendor much more this time and probably have multiple vendors. The way we did it the last time was not good.
There were problems. I actually did redid my landscape, put in a lot of drought tolerant, and I actually cut my water usage monthly by 60%.
Wow, really?
It was phenomenal, because I had a hill and I was trying to water it and the water would run down the hill. So we changed it to drought tolerant and I was amazed.
Oh.
You know, it really worked. So I think you're right. That's good. Maria Calvin, one of our board members, has a good question. LA City has been complicit in supporting all the state bills coming out of Sacramento that end single family neighborhoods and take away local control. If you become mayor, would you ensure that the city and your planning department stand up for all single family neighborhoods and push back on Sacramento's attack on local control?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only would I do that, and I mean, and that's the other thing that I bring to the table are those state relationships too. I mean, in order to address our problems and especially our crisis, you have to have a whole of government approach. And that means you have to have all the levels of government that are operating in sync. And I know that Sacramento acts sometimes because they feel that, you know, building is not happening enough. One of the things that I appreciated about your association is that I know you guys, you know, are not fans of SB 9, but you have your own proposals. And I think that's the best way to work with neighborhoods. I don't know if Jeff Calvin is on, but I always cite your—
His wife is, she's on our board.
Oh, okay.
Maria.
Okay. Because I always talk about you guys, because I remember when I was first interacting with you, it was actually the toy drive during Christmas. So that tells you how long ago it was. But the idea of focusing on transit oriented development, but also the shopping centers that are, you know, pretty much dying. I mean, in the Valley, in your area, you know, there's wide corridors. And the point is that you had another solution. So to me, the best way to deal with this is to make it neighborhood specific. But, you know, you have a neighborhood that now I'll tell you, you know, my congressional district, you know, I cover a lot of the west side. I go all the way up to the border of Santa Monica. And there's some neighborhoods that you just can't even have the discussion. And I appreciated that you guys were willing to have the discussion. You just had your own way that you wanted to go about it.
That's good. We have to talk about these things.
I also think that part of it is having a planning department. And again, these are the problems that we had. I mean, I did this for 14 years where I was working. I have never worked in City Hall, but I worked with City Hall every day for 14 years. And the biggest problem we had was with the planning department and planning, you know, planning department heads that really did not want community input. That was one of the first fights we had. Actually, it was when Bradley was still mayor. Bradley cut back on citizen participation around conditional use permits. And we had to go up and, you know, have a protest up there to get the public comment time expanded and the geographic area expanded.
Maria, do you have any follow-up you want?
Yeah, thank you for addressing that. I just want to say also that Sacramento is doing a heck of a good job at trying to prevent community input.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of their legislation that's even coming now stops you from making that decision.
I know. And you know what? When we were fighting in South LA, we were actually fighting because after the civil unrest, you know, a lot of things burnt down. Well, some of the things that were burnt down, we didn't want to see built back. And when we were winning on a local level, you know what happened? The lobbyists went up to Sacramento to preempt what we were doing. That's how I actually first got involved in Sacramento, because I didn't even understand that that could happen. And so somebody up there tipped us off, and then we started having to make the weekly flights up to Sacramento to stop them from preempting what we were winning on the city council level.
Well, I think that we also, as Los Angeles, should have a big microphone when it comes to these events happening in Sacramento, and we're silent to
well, it. And you know what? That's an interesting thing, because Sacramento, I mean, the City Hall does have a lobbying shop. So I don't know what's going on there, but I will tell you on the federal level, there's a lobbying shop too. I don't often hear from them.
Yeah.
And what I learned, excuse me, in Congress a few years ago is that LA leaves all sorts of money on the table. We don't even bother applying.
Right.
And so one of the things that I want to do is set up in the mayor's office a development department where I have staff that don't do anything but look for money, write grants, look for money, get federal money, you know, et cetera. So I think we could have a much bigger presence. And I think that just depends, because when I was in Sacramento, the city of LA had a huge presence. I mean, we're 30% of the legislature. So, but I also don't know, and this is what I would do, and maybe it's because I was a former speaker, but I would meet with the LA delegation. I mean, when we have our swearing in up there and they call for the county, it's like 30 people stand up. So we have a lot of power that I don't think is actually used.
Thank you. Thank you. Marcia Seltz has an interesting question. There are numerous candidates running for other city offices that want to defund the police for every council district and city controller. The LA Times has endorsed all of them. If you're elected, how will you work with these defund the police candidates if they're elected?
The LA Times have endorsed them, really?
I'm reading the question.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah, I didn't have time to verify it today.
Well, it's pretty simple. We're not going to defund the police. That's all. And we're not going to cut the police. We have an increase in crime right now. So that's
Okay,
like not a wise thing to do. And as you know, my position on hiring police officers has, you know, led to me getting roundly criticized, but that's okay. I mean, I understand that people might not be happy with the positions that I take, but I do what's right. And I know when I had to negotiate budget deals, you kind of knew you hit the sweet spot when everybody was mad.
Hey, Bob, can I do a kind of a follow-up and jump in for a second?
Absolutely, Matt.
I was going to ask a question when all the candidates were going to be on, because I watched a couple of the televised debates, and the one that I was really made me very angry on was the one that was on Fox 11, when each one of the candidates was asked,
Where you felt safe?
yeah, and do you feel safe walking on the streets in Los Angeles? And every single one of you, including you, Karen,
Yes,
you said you feel safe.
yes.
It made me so angry. I'm 6'3". I grew up in Sherman Oaks. I live in Sherman Oaks, and I do not feel safe walking streets of Sherman Oaks, let alone any other part of the city. And I was shocked. And so many of I received so many emails from other folks that felt the same way, that the candidates are not connected.
So let me be clear that the question that was asked was, do you feel safe in your neighborhood? And I do feel safe in my neighborhood, but at the same time, I said, I absolutely understand that many Angelenos around the city do not feel safe, and that has to be addressed. But if you asked how I feel in the neighborhood that I'm in right now, I feel safe.
So we spent a lot of time, we spent a lot of money on the unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
And the unhoused in crime, the unhoused in fires starting in the hills, the unhoused, and the amount of money that we spend on services, fire, ambulance, all that stuff is amazing. But there's also, we have to start taking care of the residents, the taxpayers,
the housed
that are taking their kids to school, that can't walk on the streets, a fear of being attacked or being killed. So, address that, Karen. If you're mayor of Los Angeles, what's going to happen that's different to take care of this issue?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. So crime has increased, and we have to address that. And the way that I would address it would be to increase police presence in neighborhoods that are experiencing this and want this. Not all neighborhoods want an increased police presence. I believe that the quickest way to get officers on the beat is to get officers from behind the desk who are already trained, already ready, and put them on the street and hire civilians. At the exact same time, I would also hire police officers. But the difference with me is that I'm trying to be as honest as possible. And there's a few things that I know, and I think you guys know this as well. The Los Angeles Police Department right now cannot fill a class to recruit officers. They have a capacity of 40 recruits in a specific class. They can't get above 20. So people who tell you that they're going to hire all of these police officers and like magic, they're going to be on the street right away, I do not believe is honest. Now, the other reason why they are having difficulty filling the classes is because there is a shortage in the personnel department. Why? Because at the beginning of COVID, the city was not confident that the federal government was going to send money. So the city pushed a lot of employees in the personnel department and the other departments to take early retirement. So they're extremely short. So I would hire civilians to get cops on the beat immediately. I would hire in the personnel department so that we could hire police officers and vet them quicker. And then I would hire officers. Now, at the same time,
I'm sorry. I mean, you think hiring more officers is going to solve the homeless issue?
Well, you were asking me, I'm sorry if I didn't. Were you asking me about homelessness, or were you asking me about
the unsafe streets? The unsafe streets are mostly because of the unhoused.
Well, what I was addressing was crime that was not related to homelessness. If you want me to go into depth about how I would address homelessness, I will do that. But let me finish the crime piece. Okay. Because I believe that you have to deal with crime today. You have to hold people accountable for all that means, arrest, prosecution, whatever. At the same time, I want to invest dollars in preventing future crimes with research-based and tested strategies. So I just finished doing that a year ago. The last thing in my mind was running for mayor, but we were able to get earmarks for specific projects. So in my district, I brought millions of dollars in to fund these crime prevention projects. You suppress crime to address crime today, and then you invest to prevent crime in the future. Now, talking about homelessness, the homelessness situation, because I'm referring, and I talk to the police chief regularly, by the way, because I've been dealing with crime issues for a very, very long time. So we check in every now and then so that I understand what the trends are that are happening. In terms of homelessness, we have to get people off the street immediately. We need to get them into shelters, but we need to do a different model of shelter so that we're not just spreading COVID back and forth. We need to address the reason why they are unhoused. And the way that you get people off the streets is through outreach workers who are formerly unhoused, the organizations such as the LA Family Housing that exist in the San Fernando Valley. There are some people who are not going to leave the streets. Those people have to be dealt with because at the end of the day, there's some things that you don't do on the street, and sleeping is one of them. Now, I would like to think that we can get the vast majority of them to move, and everybody that does this work tells me that you can, but that does not negate the fact that there's going to be some who are recalcitrant, who aren't going to have to move, and that's not acceptable. They will have to move.
So can we stay on this subject for a little bit? Because Bobby, you okay with staying on this for a little bit?
Yeah, sure, Matt.
Okay, so again, we've been hearing this for years and years and years and years that we need to get them off the streets, but they're not getting off the streets.
Yes.
If I, as a business person, wanted to keep my business open until 4 o'clock in the morning and play loud music and upset all my neighbors, I would be shut down, and there would be laws, and there would be rules, and there would be enforcement. The city keeps looking at the county, and the county keeps looking.
Yeah, but that's.
And the state keeps looking at the feds. Yeah, but you're part of the system right now. You're in Washington. You print money. You have the authority to go ahead and point money at different places. What can literally be done? We have been hearing about this that needs to be done. If these people will not get off the street, what is the hard choice that needs to happen that Karen Bass, as our mayor of Los Angeles, is going to do in the first 100 days of office to get these people out of our streets that my children cannot walk on, that I can't walk on, that you can't walk on and feel safe? What's going to be done? What's the hard choices that are going to be done?
You know what? I mean, at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't move on their own, they're going to have to be removed. I know this. The deal is that what I don't want to see happen is that we just move them off of your street onto somebody else's street. We have to solve the problem. So what do I bring to the table different? I bring to the table the relationships with the different levels of government so that we can call FEMA, so that this can be treated like an emergency. And you can't call FEMA if you don't declare a national state of emergency. The governor has the power to do that. I'm hoping that the governor will do that. If he doesn't do that, what I've been doing is going around and getting support from mayors around the state and mayors who are impacted by this in different cities. The mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Portland, the mayor of Kansas City, the mayor of Sacramento, because we can all go to the White House. I mentioned to you that on June 1st, Marcia Fudge is coming out. She's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. We need to have regulations waived with our vouchers because people can't use the vouchers. Why? Because the dollar amount is so low and the price of housing here is high. I think one of the other reasons why people haven't stayed housed is because we've not addressed why they were unhoused to begin with. We have to deal with substance abuse and mental illness. How am I going to deal with that? There is a hospital that I think I told you about the last time I met with you, 344 beds. It's on Beverly Boulevard near downtown LA. It's in pristine condition. It is empty. Right. It's empty. The owner is willing to rent or sell it to the county or the city. Now the problem is there's a federal regulation that says you can't have more than 19 people in a facility. The federal government can waive that regulation. Yes, I have been in office. I realize that that's a derogatory statement right now, but in fact, I have the relationships that I can deliver. What have I been doing? Because by the way, that's another attack ad that says I've done nothing around homelessness. I'm trying to deal with the populations that are homeless. And you know that people are there for a variety of reasons. I started off by saying, if we can get transformation in the nation's child welfare system, that is an entire category of people who are unhoused. We have 5,000 children that are unhoused. When you grow up in foster care, when you turn 18 or 21, we put you on the street, and 4 months later, you wind up in tents. When we decreased the prison population, we didn't think about where they were going to go. So we discharged them from prison, and now they're in tents. I'm working on legislation and resources, of which I told you I brought several $1 million in my district to deal with this, to deal with people who have been incarcerated, to get them to reintegrate to society in a positive way. Now, I'm only dealing with resources in my district because as a member of Congress, that's all that I can do. And I've been in Congress 12 years. It took 11 years before we were approved to give targeted funding. Prior to that, we were not able to do that. So Kate, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go.
So in terms of the county, I have worked with the county for decades. The 5 supervisors I consider my personal friends. I think it is ridiculous that the city and the county do not function like this. There's no reason for it. An example that just happened was the settling of the lawsuit. You familiar with that? The Alliance lawsuit? Okay, the Alliance sued the city and the county. The city settled. That makes no sense for the city to settle without the county. And so the lawsuit basically says that we, the city, we're going to increase the number of shelter beds by 60%, and we're only going to house in shelters people who are economically unhoused. So if you have substance abuse or mental illness, you got to call the county. Now, if that's not the essence of dysfunction, I don't know what is. What if you have a family and the husband is economically unhoused and the wife has a mental illness? So he goes one place and she goes another. So what I would do as mayor, and I feel confident that I can do this because I have the experience and the relationships to deliver this, that the city and the county have got to work like this. I've spent months trying to figure out why the dysfunction is there. And the only thing I can come to is ego and turf. That's it. I don't have ego when it comes to this because people are dying on our streets. I've worked with the Department of Mental Health. I've worked with child welfare. I've worked with the general welfare department. I know these departments. And it's fine to say, I have no experience. I've never been an elected official. Turn everything over to me and I can solve the problems.
Okay.
Matt, let me get to one last question.
Yeah, I was going to say, go for it, Bob.
And this is my question. And I apologize for using a really bad word in front of you. And that bad word is metro. And I know you said in January that you were hearing a lot of bad things. It's gotten worse.
Yeah.
They tell us nothing. They do nothing. They're running out of money. The transit corridor, they've got 3 monorails. They've got 2 subways. They've got one that ruins our community by running trains through it. Do you support or oppose or what's your position? We can't get into a lot of details, but
yeah,
they're not telling us anything and it's driving everybody crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I read on your website, I read the document, I have it in front of me, and it seems like, I don't know if this has changed, but it seems like alternative 1 and 2, you guys say it's acceptable only if, so it seems like there might be a little room there. I know in this document you say that Metro basically did very superficial, it sounded insulting, frankly, citizen involvement. Yeah. So what I would do is I would make sure that there is participation, that's substantive participation with the people in the area. You guys have done your homework. You know what alternatives work and what they don't. But it seemed like if I looked at alternative 1, 2, and 3, you do have an area where it says it's acceptable only if. So that only if to me meant it might be possible if you can get.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, but they've got it running on the side of the road in one part of
Right.
the valley that people are pretty upset
Right.
about. And that's something, if we knew about it, we could talk about it and we could meet with the community. But they don't let us do that. So
You know, again, my background in starting the organization that I did 32 years ago, it's because of these kind of things.
Yeah.
This is the exact reason, is because and we shouldn't have to do this. I mean, our government should work for us. But what I learned is that we have to force our way in the door, okay? So, you know, I mean, most of my life, by the way, has been spent in the private sector. The first time I ran for office, I was in my 50s. So I've not been an elected official for decades and decades. And I ran really out of the frustration for dealing with the exact same things that you're talking about. So I will make sure. I also told you guys from my experience in the Valley since I started running, you guys have a level of organization in the Valley that I've not seen anywhere in the city. The layers of organizations that you have. And I said that I would appoint a deputy mayor to deal with the Valley. But in making that appointment, I would come to you guys along with all the other organizations in the Valley, the business organizations, neighborhood organizations, and ask you what you want of this person and have you participate in it. I believe that that is the way our democracy is supposed to work. People are supposed to be involved.
Thank you. We're going to need help with Metro. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Matt,
I do have to ask Matt, did I answer your question?
You did, you did. And yes, you did. Thank you, Karen.
I just want to say too, because I didn't mention this to this group, you know, I have a background in the medical field. I worked at County General Hospital. My patients were unhoused. My patients were crime victims. And by the way, in 1993, when I was at Community Coalition, we were trying to take over motels to deal with the unhoused. In 1993.
It's crazy.
It took a pandemic because in the city council district in South Central, there were 54 motels and no tourists. So what do you think was happening in those motels? So our whole point is, why don't we use this for housing? It took a pandemic for that to happen.
Thank you for your time. You want to give a closing statement, a closing?
Well, I just want to tell you that, you know, I am seriously doing this, and I gambled everything by leaving Congress. I didn't leave Congress or didn't run again because of all the crazy stuff in Congress. I actually like Congress. I figured out how to work with my Republican colleagues in a bipartisan fashion. I have spent a good part of my life building coalitions across ideology, geography, race, class. And I think that that experience, along with my relationships on the different levels of government and my understanding of these problems, allows me a leg up in terms of how they would be dealt with. And also, I told you guys the last time, this is it for me. I'm not running for mayor so I can turn around and run for something else. I'm old enough now to say, this is it. And I think that that's important, because I think politicians get into trouble when they get elected to an office and they have their eyes on something else.
Right. Well, we've taken you over the time that you gave us tonight, and thank you very, very, very much. And I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Please check your newsletter for the upcoming meeting. You'll be very happy with who our speaker is next month as well. And that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It was a pleasure to have you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We look forward to seeing you at the toy drive again this year.